You take this and you've checked out the colour of people's faces. Disgraceful. You're disgraceful.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to tell you I will be interviewing now heavyweight libertarians Godfrey Bloom. Good morning to all my viewers, and good morning, Sir Godfrey. And I'm really happy you accepted my invitation.
Great pleasure.
I would like to introduce you first because this is very important to me and it's like personal thing. So when I open the Wikipedia, I can see Godfrey William Bloom is a British politician who served as a member of the European Parliament for Yorkshire and Humber from 2004 to 2014. He was elected for the UK Independence Party in the European elections of 2004, 2009, representing UKIP until September 2013. And then we go further. On September 2013, UKIP withdrew the party whip from Bloom after he hit journalist Michael Crick in the street with a conference brochure.
What a racist comment is that? How dare you? That's an appalling thing to say. You're picking people out for the colour of their skin. You disgust me. Get out of my way.
I mean, I'm making the point that you haven't... what's appalling about race? That's not
You, sir, are a racist.
Why am I racist for saying there are black people?
And you've checked out the colour of people's faces. Disgraceful. Disgraceful.
And now my question is, which I want to always ask you, because I watched it live and it was brilliant what you did, you know, your response, because clearly the Michael was really racist and your response was very quick, brilliant, saying, you know, why are you picking people by the color of the skin? And this could be breakthrough because people could eventually realize, you know, you can be racist towards white people as well. But then I found out Nigel Farage wasn't happy at all about it and he suspended you. Why did he do it?
Well, when he suspended me for 2 weeks, I was suspended. I lost the whip for 2 weeks. And it was quite an interesting little period of time. I'd been getting disenchanted with UKIP for some time. It was starting to become an establishment party. It was failing to talk about race. It was failing to talk about immigration from outside the European Union. It was failing to talk about radical reform, which we need. It was failing to talk about tax and banking reform. All these things were failing. And I actually resigned the year before. And I was persuaded to withdraw my resignation. And when it blew up at the conference with Michael Crick, showing me a brochure and pointing out the color of people's skin, which is something I simply can't abide. Judging people by the color of their skin is primitive. I just don't, I can't be dealing with it. And so I lost my temper and whacked him over the head, which everybody could see. But when Nigel withdrew the whip, he said something which I think was a bit of a giveaway. I was possibly one of the most popular people in the party and in the country at that time, as you probably know. He said, the trouble is, whenever I get interviewed by the press, all they want to do is talk about you. And of course, Nigel finds that very difficult to cope with. It was a one-man band, UKIP. It was a one-man party, and nobody else really was given any space. And if somebody came along who was popular with the party and was popular with the people, the electorate, he found that as a threat. I was no threat to Nigel. I didn't want the leadership of the party. I had no interest at all. But Nigel, if you look at Nigel's career with UKIP, with the Brexit Party, with everything he does, there's only room in it for Nigel. He's a great campaigner. He was a great friend of mine for many years. But there's only room for Nigel in any room.
Yeah, and I can tell you were the most known as well libertarian and free marketer, because that's my next question. I met Nigel Farage a few times because I lived for over 10 years in Bromley, which is in Kent, southeast London. And Nigel Farage lived Nigel Farage lived not far from me. I'm in Wales now. I escaped London just before everything started, so I'm so happy I escaped there. And I met Nigel Farage. I was watching him online for many years already. I met him in the hospital when he had a accident when he was flying the banner. And then I've noticed you're quite loyal, because whenever you asked about Nigel Farage, you don't talk too much, just a few words, because I know you've been friends for many years. But if you could tell us a little bit, how is he? Is he really? So I think I find him a socialist, really, like a democratic socialist, whatever they call it. They change it. He's not a free marketer or libertarian, is he?
No. He is what we would regard as a social democrat. His driving ambition was to actually leave, like all of us, was Brexit. He was a Brexiteer. He wanted to, from the very beginning, and we were both in it from the very beginning, 30 years ago nearly. So we were both founder members or nearly founder members. He was in a bit earlier than me. He didn't found UKIP, of course, He didn't found the party. Somebody else found the party. He took over the leadership much later. But anyway, leaving that aside, yes, he has no interest in anything outside Brexit, basically. So if you were to ask him about banking reform, tax, the role of the state, all these things in which I write about, and I have been since well before politics, and I write books on the subject, on libertarianism and all the things. He has no interest in that. He has no interest and doesn't claim any interest in it. So consequently, when you've only got Brexit in your armory, and then you get Brexit of a sort, not real Brexit, but of a sort, he had nothing left in his armory. He'd run out of ammunition. And that was the problem with UKIP. When we went into the election in 1915, I think it was, we got 4 million votes the previous year in the European elections, 4 million. It was the biggest supported party. Quite extraordinary, because in Yorkshire, in my county, we went from me starting it with a friend and my dog, UKIP, in about 65, then the branch offices here, and we went to 400,000 votes in 2014. So there was massive support in Yorkshire, massive support, overwhelming, and the rest of the country, with one or two certain exceptions, and Brexit was one. But we didn't go into the 2015 election with a shadow cabinet or any other serious policy. No radical policy. We lost our radicalism in about 2007, 2008, 2009. We became another party. The hierarchy became failed conservatives. It was all the hierarchy were full of failed conservatives, and the foot soldiers were old Labour. It was an interesting mix. And of course, where we lost our radicalism was the hierarchy, the party chairman and all these people suddenly thought there was going to be an allocation for UKIP for seats in the House of Lords or knighthoods, which immediately stopped their radicalism, because they thought, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And I watched this, and that's when I left. Incidentally, I resigned from UKIP. I had the whip taken away for a fortnight. But I resigned in despair with UKIP. I wasn't sacked or kicked out of UKIP. I resigned, which is a point the press never pick up on.
Okay, so yeah, you mentioned Brexit. I remember referendum. I live in UK for the last 15 years. I didn't sleep all night when they were counting votes. And obviously the people in Poland were waiting for my report from here. And in the morning, I said, yeah, we're leaving European Union. We were so happy because, as you know, I'm a member of the Libertarian Party in Poland, like Janusz Korwin-Mikke party. And then next day, or a few days later, they invented the term Brexit, which I knew straight away is not United Kingdom leaving European Union. They just made up the word, and they started talking about soft Brexit, like hard Brexit. And I knew it's not gonna be like really leaving European Union. But yeah, what do we know so far? Do you know anything? Because I know that the whole document's got more than 1,000 pages. It's not much we know yet. Are you happy with so-called Brexit or not at all?
No, I wanted a no-deal Brexit. And on my website, there is a video that I did on trade agreements. Now, as a libertarian, I don't believe in trade agreements. Trade agreements are for the benefit of politicians and big business, and they come with political baggage. So as soon as we started negotiating a trade agreement with the European Union, it had to end in political compromise, which we've already seen as far as fishing is concerned. But the document, the bureaucracy of the European Union, as you well know, love the small print. They love small print. They love minutiae. They love detail. We won't know what kind of deal this is for months and months and months. What we do know is the British are not capable of negotiating with the French, and it's always the French who run these things. We're no good at negotiating. We're good fighters. We beat the French always in a fight, as history shows, which is why they don't like us. But in negotiation, they're better at it than us, because the British negotiators all think that everybody plays cricket and a handshake is good enough. And we're all friends, really. And the French laugh at us behind our backs because they know they will soon show the contract which we've signed, which isn't like that at all. So we're not very good at this. So consequently, we always lose. We always lose. So we wanted a no-deal Brexit. And incidentally, when I come to trade agreements, I don't want one with America. I can't think of a more appalling idea than a trade agreement with America. Because what will be in the small print there with the Americans was when they go sailing around the world, bombing places and shooting up places, which they seem to do with great regularity, they'll always insist that there's a British aircraft carrier with them to give it some dignity, to give it some, you know, some idea of authenticity. So no, I don't want trade agreements. I just want to open the border for trade, not people. Open the border for trade. Say, yeah, come in. Trade isn't between between countries. Countries don't trade with each other. People trade with each other. If I want to buy an Audi or a Skoda, that's between me, the dealer, and the manufacturer Skoda. It shouldn't have anything to do with a politician at all. It's none of his damn business.
Perfect. Free market and a private enterprise. Yeah, exactly. All right, then let's come back. Let's move to like what's happening now. Godfrey is unbelievable what's happening now. And then what did you think last March? If you don't mind, I'll tell you what I thought last March. I went to London because I lived there. I just, like I said, I moved not long ago. Last year I moved. So I was still visiting and getting jobs in London. I'm an electrician. So yeah. And then suddenly we found out there will be a lockdown. Yeah. First day of the lockdown, I went back to Wales. I sat at home and I was thinking about it. What the hell is going on? And then my friend from London sent me a picture from his window in the block of flats where it was the first day of the lockdown. The streets were empty and there was 8 or 9 police officers, plainclothes police officers, standing there, smoking cigarettes, drinking some coffee or whatever, and they're just like tapping each other and just laughing. And it looked like, he sent me the picture and it looked like they were saying the world is mine, my oyster. You know, the streets are empty and now we are the rulers. And I lived through martial law in 1980s in Poland. And I've seen the same picture from my window where there was martial law 1981, 1982. And exactly was only police officers all over the streets. And it just recalled all bad memories. And I knew something's wrong, something's dodgy here. And it's not about, I don't want to say the word, it's not about disease, it's about something big, much bigger. What did you think last March? Did you know straight away something's wrong?
I certainly suspected it straight away. I wasn't 100% convinced. It's interesting you mentioned Poland because, you know, my wife is half Polish and my father-in-law was very much 100% Polish. He was with the 1st Polish Armoured Division in Normandy, and of course he set up here after the war. And he used to take the family to Poland at that time, and he used to look at it and he used to see it. He used to see behind the Iron Curtain and knew exactly how it was. So when your friend showed you those clips, yes, and photos, I was very suspicious because I'm also a military historian, a published military historian, and I know that we, even through the worst days of the war in London, we didn't close our theatres and we didn't close our pubs. We said to people, it's very dangerous, the Blitz, and later in 1944 and 45, we had the V1s and the V2s, which killed 40,000 people. So the casualties with the Blitz, civilian casualties in London were very high. But we left it to the people to choose if they wanted to go to the pub or they wanted to go to the theatre. It was up to them. We never saw it as a decision for a politician, even in the darkest days of the war, to restrict people's freedom in that way. Now, they gave us the story that it was to protect the NHS from being overwhelmed in the first 2 weeks. And I looked at it and I was very suspicious. But I said, okay, well, let's just see how this pans out. Because Chris Whitty actually said, the medical advisors to the government said at the very beginning, this wasn't a killer virus. And it isn't a killer virus. This isn't like Ebola or something like that. It's a very nasty virus, very nasty indeed. And it will kill, as seasonal flu always does, the old and the sick. And it always takes them away at this time of the year in November and so on and so forth. Nobody's denying it's a very nasty bug, but the reaction we've had is absolutely ludicrous. We know, if you look at what we know, and I'm a research economist by profession, we know that the number of excess deaths in 2020 is not as high as 1957, 1968, 1969, and it's about the same as 2010. So what does that tell us? It tells us that this isn't unprecedented. We've been here before. So this business about being the biggest disaster since the war is simply not true. Let's look at hospitals. They built the Florence Nightingale hospitals, several of them, very quickly, very efficiently, to save the threat to the NHS. They then dismantled them. So the government knows that the threat to our systems, our NHS systems, are no worse than they have been in bad years before. And if you look at the statistics, and so, Dr. Claire Craig, who runs these statistics online, Dr. Claire Craig will show you that the pressure on ICU units and hospital beds at the moment is absolutely no different from what it was historically and has been historically. In fact, the overall deaths, let's look at overall deaths of people who died of anything in this country in 2020 is slightly behind the last 5-year average. So what does all this tell us? It tells us that this is not to do with public health. This has got something else. Masks. They didn't think masks work. They said masks don't work. All the independent medical professional people know that masks don't work. Trying to keep a virus out of your face with a cloth mask is like to keep a mosquito out with chicken wire. You couldn't think of anything more ludicrous. If you also look at the transmission of viruses, you know they come through the eyes, not the nose and not the mouth. So what's all this about masks? Masks is a way of showing your civility to the state. The state says you must wear masks. So everybody walks around and it's a mark of civility to the state. It's nothing to do with health. Look at an aerosol virus. If you're walking in the countryside and your farmer is spraying his field in the spring, maybe a mile away, you can smell the spray. The idea that it's going to save you getting the virus by standing more than 6 feet away from somebody is insane. It's utterly ludicrous. It's laughably stupid. So all these things they're making us do, but that enables them to close the pub. Where do we all talk to each other? Where do we all talk to each other? In the pub, people across the sections of society. One thing governments hate is freedom of association.
Yes, that was the next question I wanted to ask you, but you already touched it. Yeah, because you talk a lot about closing the pubs, and I think exactly the same. Because again, I'm coming back to 1980s in Poland. Stay home. Obviously, we didn't have internet or telephones at all. But yeah, stay home. Do not contact each other. Just stay there. During this year, they were arresting people, and they were looking who can be useful later, well, you know, after transformation. And therefore, Lech Walesa was our president, which was like KGB agent. But yeah, and also I've seen your podcast, little podcast, 2-3 days ago with the nurse from some hospital, I think somewhere Portsmouth or Southampton, Rebecca, I think her name was, and another. And yeah, she admitted there is much less beds now in hospitals because they had to remove some of them because of the distancing. And also she said exactly what you said now about masks. She knows they do not help, but it's just a sign of the epidemic, and people have to know there's an epidemic. It's so scary to me because she seems to be a very nice person. And she just says with a smile on her face, sorry, we have to wear the masks for now because that's, you know, that's the policy. So like I was comparing it, I'm an electrician. Like I said, I'm going to your house. Your electrics is in a very bad state. And I said, sorry, mate, you have to move out. I'm closing your house now. No, I don't do it. I just advise you, listen, mate, you have to improve your electrics, and I'm going. Yeah, it's not my job to close down your house and said, you know, for your safety, we're closing the city or whatever. But yeah, and then, but my next question is, I saw you another podcast with James Delling-Paul and Andrew Bridgen, I believe, MP. And they really, this guy, they really believe they're saving the life, they saving UK, and they saving us. You know, do you really believe he was really worried about us, our, you know, well-being, or is just a game?
Very difficult to say, Seb. It's very difficult to say. My wife and I discuss it a lot. We're never quite sure whether people are incredibly stupid, dishonest, gullible. We're not quite sure where otherwise you'll have friends, I'm quite sure, who are otherwise reasonably intelligent, who walk around with masks like it's going to somehow save their life, when all the independent medical side, but the government's told us to wear masks. So that's all right. I don't understand it. I can't answer the question. It's completely beyond me. But then I suppose if it's outside your sphere, if you are, I mean, you're an electrician, I'm a research economist. So I can't put a shelf up. I can't change a plug. I'm absolutely hopeless. My wife despairs of me. You're very good at that. That's what you do. But now here's the difference between us. You make sure that you inform yourself. You take the trouble to find out what the truth is, which means you have to move away from mainstream media and actually drill down. And you know, the most informed person I know about this, it isn't my friends who are barristers or lawyers or accountants, it's my window cleaner. My window cleaner makes an effort to find out what the real truth is. How many people have died? For example, and I didn't have to tell him this, but I have to tell most people, the number of fit and healthy people who have died from COVID with no other comorbidity, with nothing else wrong with them, is 2,000. And under 65, it's about 370. That is fewer people than die in road accidents. So this, as I say, can't have anything to do with health. This is all about political control. And I think I know why this is.
Oh, I'm guessing that we bankrupted, you know, like most of countries are bankrupted and are bankrupt. So yeah, they have to do somehow to cover it up. But you probably think the same. And yeah, and that's another question then, because I've been to almost every protest in London. I've been to Manchester. We have a big group of like friends in here, party members. We always carry our flags with Corvin on it or freedom on it. So I've been to all protests. And last time I went to London and police was behaving, you know, I was terrible. And just what happened to British police, you know, everyone, you know, we came from Poland. We got used to like brutality of the police. And I always was telling to my friends in UK, it may never happen. It will never happen. They're different people. I spoke to many police officers on the streets before, obviously, and they were very nice chaps. You know, you could chat with them, ask for help, things like this. And now they just kicking, you know, crap out of you, you know, on the streets of London. I've been to the last protest for 15 minutes. My wife was there. My daughter was there. And I said, after 15 minutes, you move. You go back, get on the train, go where the car is, because they were like arresting and beating up all people. What happened to the British forces?
Well, you may have seen my video. I've done a number of videos on this, which are also on my website. The problem that we have is manifold. First of all, we've had the politicization of the police, which has been happening for the last 20 years. So the police at the top are promoted on their political affiliations. We have had fast track through the police ranks to be promoted with university graduates who have been politicized at university. The ordinary policeman has left or is no longer recruited. I have 2 policemen who live in my village, 3 policemen, 3. And I live in a tiny village, and they don't police locally, they police in a big town far away. They're old school, they're old style. You know, they're nice, relaxed people, they're good people. And they would be reflective of the police force 20 years ago. Now they're the exception. They're the exception. And it comes right from the top. But you will have seen the difference in policing between Black Lives Matter and freedom marches that you've been on. If you're an eco-warrior, or if you are a Black Lives Matter, you're left alone. They do not touch you in a demonstration. It's only if you're a freedom person that you get attacked and arrested by the police. That comes straight from the top. That comes straight from the top. Who they will police and who they will not police. So we have this kind of political policing. And of course, Black Lives Matter and eco warriors who close down the city maybe for a week are actually supporting government policy. So the police and the heads of police and the Home Office say, that's all right, don't worry, you're all right. But if you're demonstrating for freedom from police authority or political control, they clamp down on it. So the whole thing is fake. It's very disappointing. Good policemen are leaving every day. It's a great shame, but this didn't start in COVID. This started some years ago.
Yeah, I have like discussions very often with friends or not friends only, and I try to always mention fascism, and they say no, it's not possible. It wouldn't happen in a country like Great Britain. But I just tell them, you know, Benito Mussolini, the founder of fascism, he described it quickly in like 2 sentences: nothing against the state, everything within the state. That's fascism. That's it, and that's it. You don't have to, you know, elaborate what fascism means. That's it. So, like you said, those protests, they support government's agenda, build back better, or whatever it means. But yeah, so
yeah, these phrases are interesting, Seb. These phrases, build back better, the new normal. This is unadulterated fascism, and I don't use fascism in the pejorative sense, which is it's become a sort of it's become a word of abuse.
Yeah,
it isn't. Fascism is a political system, a very popular political system before the war, particularly popular in mainland Europe, and still is. And I've written an article again on my website on exactly what fascism is, because a lot of people don't actually know. And the phrase that you just gave us is exactly right, and it encapsulates it, which is exactly right. But of course, what it is the political, banking, and big business association between them, all 3 of them together, who run the country or run the economy. And this is, of course, what the European Union is. It's big business, banks, bureaucrats, and politicians to control. There is no aspect of democracy. The French love it, the Italians, everybody in mainland Europe is rather drawn towards that style of government. That's what they've had. They've had it for 100 years. You could argue that it was before even Mussolini, that style of government. They might not have called it fascism. So they've had that style of government. What is very disappointing is that this disease, which is a lot more harmful than COVID ever will be, this disease of the mind that has come across, that somehow that this is acceptable, that this lockdown is acceptable, that this political control is acceptable. How's it come about? Well, it started with welfarism after the war. when the state decided, the state pact was with people, said, we will pay your social security, we'll provide all your health, we'll provide your pensions, we'll provide your education, in exchange for which we will have complete control and a very high system of taxation. We will take a lot of money off you in tax in exchange. But now we have a whole generation who know nothing else. We have a generation who know nothing else. They think that the state is their protector. Most people, sadly, because they've had a dumbed down education by the state, and the average state education now is really poor, they think they don't know what the principles of English law. They don't know the stewardship of their rights under the Bill of Rights, Magna Carta. They don't know all these things. And what is interesting in Poland, I spoke at the Warsaw School of Economics a couple of years ago. And I speak at Cambridge University and Oxford and Durham, all the big universities. And I spoke at Warsaw. The standard, let me tell you this, the standard of undergraduate academically in Warsaw is miles ahead of Britain, miles ahead of Britain. They're much, you will find if you speak to an economics undergraduate at Warsaw School of Economics, he'll be able to speak 3 languages probably. He'll be able to discuss the Napoleonic campaigns in the Iberian Peninsula. He'll be able to discuss Keynesianism, Austrian School of Economics, Chicago School. None of this they can do in an English university. So it's very easy to manipulate people who haven't had the benefit of a traditional education. These young people are very nice. They play cricket, they play rugby, they like a beer. I get on very well with them personally, but they haven't had what you and I would describe as an education.
And also, there's no many libertarians like libertarian ideas on in UK. Like, for example, UKIP member for years, European Parliament member for years, James Delingpole, which is, a great journalist, Peter Hitchens, and I see them talking, and then I see YouTube views is like 10,000, 20,000, and I just do my weekly report from here, and it's over 500,000 views. Only people want to know if maybe there is something more, like maybe UK is still more free country than Poland. They're just hungry for that in Poland. And we have now 11 MPs in the parliament as well. So is there any, where does it go? Give us some hope. Is there, because obviously Polish viewers would like to know what's going to happen in UK. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel, or that's it, we're done?
That's a good question. I get asked that quite a lot. My wife asked me that question more than anybody else. Well, my social media footprint on Twitter isn't very much, about 20,000 views. I've got about 30,000 followers. I get about 20,000 views on Twitter, but my hits on Facebook are over 100,000. So I'm getting 100,000 views of my material every week. And of course, I came back out of politics. So I was out of the public eye for several years. So I've come back. If I'd kept the momentum going, it would have been much higher. But is there any light at the end of the tunnel? That's a very difficult question. You see, if I ask somebody, walking the dog down the riverside, something of that nature, and we get chatting, and I say, do you know anybody at all who is fit and healthy who's died of COVID? And of course they say no. How could they? Because the chances of them knowing somebody who's fit and healthy who's died of COVID would be 1 in 250,000, all right, if you check the numbers. Do you know anybody who's got it? And sometimes they scratch their head and they said, oh, no, I don't, or Great Aunt Edna had it, or so on and so forth. And of course, also, occasionally, I will speak to somebody and say, yes, I had a friend who died of cancer, but when they went into hospital or the hospice for their final days, were tested and were positive COVID, and COVID went on the death certificate. So we know the death certificates are fraudulent. They're then taken by the state and hyped up. So we know, but you see, the average Brit is not a political animal. And that's because he's had 1,000 years of freedom. We've had 1,000 years with not being invaded. We've had 1,000 years of apart from the world wars, of relative prosperity since the Industrial Revolution. So your average Brit is totally decadent and idle. He's not interested. So what he does is he watches television, he watches the BBC or Sky for 10 minutes in the morning and then goes off to work. And he still believes what he sees on the TV. He still believes that. Now, you and I would regard that as being totally incredible. How stupid can you be? But that is the Brit. He's not really interested. But I think Sir Desmond Swain made this point a little while ago. He said, they're not interested now, but they'll be interested when we have 4 million unemployed and the country's bankrupt. They'll then start they'll start saying, how did all this happen? And of course, it's happening now before their very eyes, but they just can't see it.
Exactly. That's what I think. People in UK still have too much savings. You know, they still good life, so they don't see what's happening. And then hopefully now something's going to change. Same in USA. I think the Republican Party will be broken, and then the new movement will emerge. And here I understand now what Peter Hitchens was saying for years, that he would vote Labour Party only to destroy Conservative Party. And that was good tactics, but it never worked. So, Godfrey, thank you very much. But there's one last question from my friend, which I don't understand exactly what he means here, but he's interested in things like you. So maybe you can answer the question for him. What do you think are the prospects for the British pound, given the 15% increase in M2 currency supply just since February, the very slim British gold reserves, and the growing importance of Asian currencies? Can you answer it for him?
I would suggest that all fiat currencies are doomed. They're doomed because they're intrinsically valueless. And so consequently, they must eventually find, as they have done in history, their intrinsic value, which is nothing. So the future for the pound is doomed, as indeed is the euro, as indeed is the dollar. What is very interesting is that a lot of people think that Bitcoin and gold are going up. This is a misunderstanding. What they don't understand is that fiat currency is going down. So the fiat currencies, paper currencies, have reduced by 80% since the beginning of this century. In other words, in the last 20 years against gold. We will see the difference between the Weimar Republic in the 1920s, 1920-23, was that you could go to another asset-backed currency. The French franc was gold back, the dollar was gold back. So as the Deutschmark collapsed in 1923, for example, you could buy a very good house in Berlin, in a fashionable part of Berlin, for $100. Now, the difference we have now, there's nowhere to go because all currencies are fiat. Now, what might happen with a question there for the Far East currencies is the gold reserves that China now has, officially, unofficially, and in their population. It's quite possible that they could have a currency, a Chinese currency, which is gold back, which would be hard currency. And America have brought this on themselves by weaponizing the dollar. The big mistake they had in 1971 when they made the petro, they came off the gold standard and made the petrodollar, which then trashed the dollar. And of course, the dollar, the 1971 dollar, is now worth about 6 cents. It's completely, since 1971. In my lifetime, it has completely disappeared. So this is the problem. Now, then they used the petrodollar as a system to bully the rest of the world. Now, people talk about the conflict maybe between China and America and the South China Sea, or so on and so forth. China could destroy America immediately by just selling all their T-bonds. They got $1 trillion. They just put them on the market. It would kill. And of course, what we have with the Americans is we have we have a $1 trillion annual military budget, which Eisenhower warned of us in 1959. He said we will be governed by the military budgets, which are now so big. They bought Congress. They bought Congress. They bought everybody. But of course, it's all on borrowed money. 11 aircraft carrier groups the Americans have. 11 aircraft carrier groups. I mean, dear, oh dear, it only is akin, in my view, to perhaps the Prussia of the late 1890s. It is a militaristic society, America. It isn't the land of the free. That's long gone. That's long gone. It's a military society which has to feed on war. And of course, there'll be another war coming down the road.
I know. I suspect so. Hopefully not. But yeah, I suspect will be. So, thank you very much, sir. And then, so well, hopefully the policy of the government will change, because for now, what they say is we need new lockdown to prevent future lockdowns. So hopefully it will change soon. So thank you very much, sir.
Anybody who believes this is absolutely, I mean, dear, oh dear. But people do. People do believe it.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, sir.
Good luck to everybody in Poland for your Polish viewers. We, strong Polish connection in my village.
Thank you. Stay with us for a couple more minutes.